Yo, so I want to make this video. Um, a few thoughts. Really good day today, by the way. Solid day. Um, just had my first day at my new job, which is a great, very much in alignment. It's dream job status right there. Um, and then also, I just got funded on my day trading account, so um, I have the potential to make a lot more money now. That all happened, those two things, in the same day, which was today. And prior to that, in this month, I was able to attend Abraham Hicks' workshop, and then also I experienced my son's first steps. So beautiful, beautiful wins, beautiful month, and I'm truly grateful for this year, the previous year, which has led to this day, and and yeah, and all the lessons learned. So hopefully, you know, this thought has come. It came to me in the morning, and I want to share it, and I know that it will be very helpful for you. Now, the difference between thinking logically and thinking intuitively. This is going to be the difference between uh, using your soul versus using your mind. And more often than not, your soul uses you, then and your soul uses you, um, versus the mind using you. And I'm gonna get into that. It's gonna be a kind of long talk. I'm just gonna share what I've seen. So I have been a very scientifically, logically oriented individual. I am a man, and so I tend, that's gonna be the general understanding of like how men operate. They operate very logically, um, and also I have interest in science. So very rational individual. At least I was in the beginning. Um, I have learned to use my strengths. I'm still very apt at science. I'm still very good at thinking concretely, identifying, analyzing, being quick to react, being very insightful. Um, but through that, there's been an evolution, and now that rationally, scientifically oriented mind has become more so a contemplative mind. And so instead of being hyperactive, fixated on situations that are external, my mind consumes the information in a way that is contemplative. Um, so I like to sit and think and reflect and and think about the implications of my actions and what the future holds, and really sit on that line of tension that you'll find when you have questions that you're stressed out about. So contemplation is the ability to look at a problem and have it be there, and just have it sit there and let it be absorbed by your mind, body, unconscious, um, and and then once you are ready, the answer comes. And it can be a problem, or it can be just a thought, or it can be an image, or it could be anything really, a sentence, a quote, etc. But contemplation is just that ability to hold that thing within your mind in a balanced state of tension, where you are between the answer and the and the feeling of not having the answer. So you have those two things playing around, and so that's just to preface kind of like what how I'm going to go about describing the mind, because there's a lower way of using the mind, and then there's a higher way of using the mind. The lower way is the much more logically oriented way, which is very much fixated on details. So when you're making a decision, you're trying to see as far ahead into the future as you can, so that you can put yourself in the right place, so that the things can go according, or at the very least, so that you don't um, risk anything or risk much of yourself. So let me just use this example of my job. So I found myself in the restaurant industry. I was using that to pay my bills while I'm figuring out my things in my business. Um, and then stuff happened. I didn't like the way it was, didn't like being there. And so I thought, okay, well, I've grown logically, I've grown a lot through the restaurant industry. I have the skills and the capacity to become a server. It's something that I really wanted, or at least I thought I wanted. I'm really good at my job. I feel like I could go and look for a job nearby that's also related to restaurants and just get paid as a server and, get paid what I am worth. Now, I think that's a very logical way of moving. And so that really takes out a lot of contingencies. Knocks the check mark of me being able to pay my bills. It knocks the check mark of me feeling a little better because I am now getting paid more. It knocks the check mark of me following a line of sequencing in my career, and continue to step up in the ladder. And it also really helps with my ego because, I'm reinforcing my ego of I'm really good at what I do. I should get paid more. But that is the way people usually make decisions. That's the way I would always make decisions. At least, it feels like it would make sense logically in terms of the way other people think. This would probably be the best move. But in the recent years, I've learned to think intuitively, and this is what I really want to make the comparison to: intuition versus intellect. And so, in this decision of me changing jobs, I actually relied on my intuition, and I said, okay, I want a new job, but I don't know exactly what that means. What does a job mean to me? And so then immediately my mind kind of detached a little bit more, and so I said, okay, just bring forth whatever is the best thing, the best approach, whatever you think will be best. And so my subconscious mind, my soul, and I'm going to use these terms interchangeably, but the way I would describe it is I let it sit in my subconscious in the background, and my soul, once I am in alignment with it, will come in and pick it up and bring forth something that is in alignment with who I truly am. So it's in the back of my subconscious, and I'm figuring out what's the next step, and I'm wondering and I'm reflecting on, certain things like, do you really want to stay in the industry? I know you've been tired of being there, and the reason that you're just using it to pay your bills is not sufficient. Doesn't make sense. It might make more sense for you to hone in on day trading, and so logically that wouldn't make sense. Statistically speaking, day trading is very, very difficult. About 90 to 99% of individuals who get into day trading do not become successful. So I have a 1 to 10% chance of failing in day trading. But intuitively, that's what my intuition told me. But intellectually, I would have not taken that risk. And this is the difference between the intuitive and the intellect. The intellect, especially the scientifically oriented individual, will move based on probability. They will move based on the likelihood of them being able to accomplish what they want to accomplish relative to other individuals. And this is something that Carl Jung has talked about before, which is, if we want to use science as a basis for reality, it's going to be very difficult because there's always going to be room for error. There's always going to be room for that 1% or whatever. And what Jung was talking about was, usually the individual is the exception. Yeah, the individual is the exception, meaning that usually the individual is that 1%. And this is interesting, but I mean, if you think about it, relative to other individuals, you are not the same. In terms of your background, in terms of the way that you think, in terms of the way that you express yourself, in terms of your genetic makeup, in terms of everything, you are a unique individual. And so for you to make a decision based on what is standard is really cutting off all your uniqueness. And so when you operate logically, you're really comparing yourself relative to others, and you're also comparing yourself relative to what others think, and you're thinking in a way that others want you to think, in a way that you're thinking in a way that you think others want you to think. And it's like this never-ending spiral of like you making judgments from a much more distant place than your core. So So I think, and this has been my experience, um, that it is always best to make decisions based on intuition. And that will look like something is difficult because people are so trained, so attached to using their mind to make decisions. But when you make decisions based on your intuition, uh, you're not moving from A to B to get to C. It's not a sequential linear ordering of things. You're going from A to B to get from C to D. So it's almost like this expansive approach. It's holistic. You're getting from A to B to look at C through Z, right? And so you have almost like this array of just letters above you. So you go from A to B, and then from B, all of these options open up, versus A to B to C, and people think, if you think about it, nature does not work like this. Nature does not work in a way which is logical. There's a lot of science to nature, but there are so many things that science cannot explain. And there's also this idea that infinity, right? The idea of infinity, the idea of us, our human existence, that is impossible. Like the probability of you being here is so small, so minuscule, that it is not rational. So the universe is not rational. Like, there is a sense to it, but it is not explicitly rational. There's a higher function. And so when you're operating from the intuitive perspective, you're operating based on how the universe actually is, how the universe operates. And I just want to add another point in terms of that, and then I'm going to go back to intellect, to talk about how you can balance between these two. But intuition is meant to be a primary mode of thinking. It's a layer above thinking, and it's more akin to being. The way it feels for me is a sense of clarity. And actually, when we're thinking about logic, intuition feels like when I'm looking at the next thing, it's the next logical step. Like, of course I will do that. It only makes sense that this unique individual, infinite being, would do that one thing. And this is different than logical sequencing, which will be, I'm going to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, because that's what the system is. That is what the status quo is. That is what most people expect, and so that's what I'm doing. But there's going to be a difference between logic and intuition, in the sense that when I'm connected to my intuition, all I need to know is that that's just my next step. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I don't know the details. I don't know the specifics. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 steps, the next 10 months. All I know is that it's going to be big. It's going to be a big transformation. From today to tomorrow, there's going to be ample opportunity for transformation the next day. So it's almost like exponential. Versus with logic, you're going to know what your next 5 steps are. You're going to know it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But your logic is so dependent on the necessity for these things to fall into place, for it to be valid. It is so dependent on these things working perfectly, and the way that you want them to, or at least the way that your ego wants them to, in order for it to actually work. And what I will say is that usually it doesn't work. Sometimes it will. Sometimes you'll nail it. You'll get it right. But most of the times, the world loves to break your reality. The world likes just shit happens. That's just the deal. That is the point of life. And so intuition factors that in. Intuition respects the fact that the universe might just have something bigger for you. Intuition is knowing that you don't need to know the thing after the next step. All you need to know is that it feels right, and it's clear, it feels right, and so that's all that matters. That's all I need to know. And so I've lived like this for the past 2 years, I think, at least 2 years. I've been studying spirituality, psychology, been very contemplative in my approach. This isn't something that I just take lightly. This is something that I'm looking at and studying at the minute details, listening to the masters, listening to the best of the best, to figure out something that is universal and that is coherent and that can be replicated across various sectors and basically just replicated through different situations. So what I know is that we look at my decision. Like, I got married, proposed to my wife in 2 weeks, and now we have a beautiful family, beautiful son, beautiful relationship. And then this job that I just picked up, applied to it, moved like that, and here I am. And it's an amazing opportunity. So yeah, you don't need to know the next steps when you're moving through intuition, with intuition. Now, there is a higher function to the intellect that needs to be discussed so that we can understand how we can interrelate these things. The higher function of the intellect is something that I've already mentioned, but it comes from discernment. And this was interesting because I heard this at my work today, going from judgment to discernment. Judgment is often saying, well, I'm looking at this, and so then this will happen. But discernment is saying, I'm looking at this, let me remove the important things, the things that I like, the things that are useful, and then move forward with an openness to reality. And that's something that people don't know how to do. People like, and it's not an issue of, it's not an issue of self-esteem or lack of efficiency or anything that has to do with your internal worth. It has more so to do with how attached you are to your ego, how attached you are to your past self or to your future self. Because you want to get it right, and that's the thing. Because you want to get it right, you are eventually going to be wrong. That is the way it's going to work. Like, this is a beautiful lesson that I've learned in trading. Like, because you want to be right all the time, you will for sure be wrong, and it will hurt a lot more. Versus not trying to be right, not trying to be wrong, just being and allowing for things to come. That is different. And this is what I was telling my wife in the morning, and I think this will bring it all together, which is, I'm not moving forward trying to be right or wrong. I don't care to be right. I don't care to be wrong. That's not the game that I'm playing. I'm moving forward just trying to be. And there's right and wrong. Yes, there is right and wrong. But there is no absolute right or wrong. There's no absolute. It is all relative. And relativity can only enter when there is rationality. So where I'm at right now can be really good compared to where I was a year ago. But where I am now could be really bad compared to who I was 3 years ago. Because I was looking down upon, like, for me, success, right, was me making it on YouTube, getting monetized, proving the system wrong, making money without having to have gone to school. I dreaded the idea of going back to school. I talked shit about it. But now here I am, married, aligned to, feeling good about myself, very well equipped for the field, for healing and from physical to spiritual healing, learning lessons, applying these spiritual things on the daily, and I'm going back to school and taking a job in the field of psychology. So it is relative, it is relative. It's interesting. I'm the same person, but not mentally. 1 year ago, this would have been great. 3 years ago, this would have been a nightmare. And that is the beautiful. It is a beautiful example of what I'm saying here, right and wrong. So when you live intuitively, you're not trying to be right. You're not afraid of being wrong. You're not forcing things to conform to the way you want them. You're allowing for what you want to come in, and discerning as you get more information, continuing to build from where you're at. You're not trying to get ahead and force things. You're not trying to go from A to B to C. You're trying to get to A to B to open you up to C through Z. And then the final point, I guess I would say, would be that living intuitively means to live only with the judgment of yourself. It means to live free of the judgments of those, and free of judgment, definitely free of judgment. But what I was thinking about in this morning was free of the judgment of others. And so much of our decision making is based on the judgment of others. But when you're honing in on your intuition, that doesn't become the major factor. What other people think is still a factor, but very small percentage of what I'm doing. If anything, it's just information for me to consider, but not so much to prioritize. And so living intuitively is a way of living that is personal to you, appeals to your uniqueness and individuality, and pushes you to the edge of your evolution. That's what living intuitively looks like and feels like. So hopefully that is helpful. I appreciate you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. Stay lucid.